Hello everybody, welcome to Tuesday's Transformational Tip. Kimberly here. And like every other Tuesday's Transformational Tip, you are getting a snippet of my own journey, the hero's journey. And I'm sure you've all heard of the hero's journey. And today I wanted to do this video because I recently found Jordan Peterson's work. He's a clinical psychologist, teaches at the University of Toronto, and he's from Alberta, Canada. And I just felt like, oh wow, when I found his work, I was really like hit in the feels, like really hit in the feels. And I stumbled across this interview he was doing, and I want to read you what he said, which really just, whew. Anyway, that's why I'm doing this video. So he says, the hero is the person who confronts horrible, chaotic potential and tames it and makes something of it, right? That's the fundamental human story. The problem is that you have to face what you don't want to face in order to fix it. And you look at all the things about yourself that need to be burned off, that need to be dispensed with. And that, man, especially at the beginning, especially if you're really screwed up, that might be like 95% of you just has to go up in flames. And it's painful. Even some of that stuff that you've burned off just doesn't want to die. And it'll scream in agony while you're burning it off. It's not pleasant. But if you know that you're the thing that can transcend your problems, most fundamentally, if you know you're the thing that, if it faces the problems, can transcend them, then you have the faith to enable you to take stock of who you are. Woo! Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I heard that. And it's so true. And so I wanted to tap into, I started thinking about why me? Why was I able to go on the hero's journey and burn off all those parts? He said it so beautifully. I think I'm going to start using that. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Burn off all those parts of us that need to go, that destroy parts of our lives, that interfere, that cause us to not trust ourselves. And I think the fundamental part of that hero's journey is the whole trust factor. We are confronting ourselves, and what we end up with is this really solid trust. And I wondered, why is it so many people do it and why is it so many people don't? Why wouldn't we confront ourselves? And I started thinking about my own journey. And I think one of the biggest factors for me is I had a responsibility, but not just any responsibility. For me, it was kids, but it was a responsibility that I wanted. I signed up for it and I took it very seriously. Mostly because I didn't want a repeat of something I had lived, being very lonely. And so I think a really big part of going on that journey is having something you're responsible for. There's like this weight on you that you have to do this, not just for yourselves, because let's face it, a lot of times we can't do it for ourselves. I know somebody who's really depressed and who has a lot to burn off and just cannot bring herself to do it. And my theory is, well, there's not enough responsibility in her life. There's not enough to do it for. And so I think it's very helpful that if you really take seriously that responsibility, like if you know that without you burning off all of these parts of yourself, life will be very different for the people involved. And so that for me was a really heavy weight. And I remember the pivotal moment, the very moment that hit me, which was after putting my kids asleep, and my son was 2 and my little girl was 6 months old. And I came downstairs and I was really depressed. And I just fell on the floor in tears with the weight, that cloak of heaviness on me. And I cried. I just wanted it to be all over. I just couldn't do it anymore. And something inside me said, these children, like, get up. It's going to be okay. Just keep moving forward. Just get up. I remember that feeling, and I just felt this deep responsibility. Like, I cannot think like that. I cannot think like that. I have to get to it. I have to make this better. It has to change. So there's two things that happen from that moment. The other thing is, I just have a belief, whether it's true or not. I don't care if it's not true. I don't care what anybody would say. I mean, my reality is my reality. There is no a reality, a general reality, an objective reality. There's only my reality. There's only your reality. Believe what you want that works for you, that makes you feel better, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. And for me, I believe that it all stops at me. Whatever needed to be burned off in me needed to be burned off in every woman before me in my family tree. And somehow I believe that their untapped potential is in me to make that journey, to do it for them. So I believe that whatever gets burned off in me, somehow, even if they're not even here, can get burned off in them too. And so I've taken that on my shoulders also as another responsibility, because I don't want it to go any further. I don't want any of that to go any further than me. It all stops at me. And I will do whatever I have to do to make that happen. And the other thing I think was really, really important for me on that journey from the very beginning is, I believed, like he said, I believed that by doing that, by confronting myself, by going inside, and by building slowly that trust, I believed that I could change things. I believed that things could be different. I believed that I had the power to change my own life. And in the beginning, I thought it would be faster, for sure. In the beginning, it's very different. We have such, our intentions are so different. Our realizations of the reality of what it is. Like, I don't know if I thought there'd be some kind of utopian world at the end of this journey, but it's just kind of funny. But I think it's normal. It's like this whole, like, that's why I don't talk about enlightenment, because it feels like there's going to be this fantasy land that we end up in. At least that's what I thought. And I was so disappointed when I realized what enlightenment actually is. And so what really happened was, by confronting myself and by growing that trust in myself step by step by step by step, I just became really resilient, emotionally resilient, really amazing emotional management. And I just started trusting myself so much more, because I confronted myself on so many different layers and levels. Things didn't necessarily turn into this fantasy land, but it would almost feel like it inside, because I am now rising to the occasion, and my muscle, that muscle got stronger. My trust in myself got stronger. And so inside it feels like fantasy land a lot of times. And I say this to myself every day, because before I went on this journey, which I didn't say yet, before I went on this journey, I was depressed, anxious, had panic attacks, anxiety, eating disorders, jealousy, addictions. And so there was a lot of confronting that had to happen. Self-sabotage. Whoo! That was me. There was a lot of confronting that had to go on, and there was a lot that had to be burned off. I had really low self-esteem, really self-destructive patterns. I thought I was the lowest of the low. Now, keep in mind that before this whole hero's journey started, I thought in the highs of life, everything was fine. I was great. I was happy. But it was in the times when the people disappeared, when I was not working, when I was alone, that's when we would really see it. That's when I would see it. That's when it would come out. That's when it was obvious. If I wasn't thinking about some future manifestation, all to escape what I wasn't confronting. That's why I talk about all the time. It seems so frivolous to me sometimes, this whole manifestation thing. And I try and put it in a way that is not aggressive or it's not too confrontational. But I think a lot of the reason why I was trying to manifest anything was to just avoid confronting myself. That's it. And now I say, and I'm grateful for it every day. There's no day that passes that I am not grateful for the morning that I woke up, put my feet on the floor, and I felt light and happy inside for no reason. And just like this morning, there's nothing going on exciting. There's nothing extraordinary. And I feel good. I'm not thinking about tomorrow. I'm not thinking about yesterday. I'm thinking about right now, just how beautiful life is. But I'm not going to say it wasn't painful. I think a lot of times I like to maybe put a little bit of fluff on it because it is really painful. And I would like to share everything that I share so that somebody else who's going on this journey, who started on this journey, can have a little bit of insight into someone else's journey. Because I found that in the beginning, I would love to have known how someone's perspective who's gone through this and who's had kids to deal with at the same time in a real life. And I did get help from meditation teachers, and I found it so fluffy. I just couldn't relate. They were sitting on cushions all day, but I had a lot of responsibilities and I had a lot to do, and people were depending on me. And so I found it really hard to get some kind of insight and get just some support from someone who's been there and who had some kind of compassion. Some people thought I was crazy. I went to see psychiatrists, psychologists. No one got it. In my experience, people just didn't get it. They did not get it. And so that's why I wanted to do this video. There are a lot of painful moments in the hero's journey, in my journey. There was a lot of painful stuff. And even today, if something comes up that is tough, that I have to reflect on, some other part I have to burn off, something in my life that, when you get at a certain level, you start seeing things that have to go, things that have to come, fears you have to face, people you have to face. And in my experience, it's always come in a way that was doable. I had enough trust in myself at that moment to be able to do what I had to do. Otherwise, I didn't have the awareness to do it. So that's good. But what I've gotten from it is priceless. Yes, it was painful. And like he says, even so, when he said some parts scream in agony. Some of those parts that we try and burn off that just don't want to go. There was a phase I went through that I think is so important to talk about, and that was the grief that I felt after that part of me was burned off. When a lot of that loneliness and a lot of that feeling of just being so alone, and that feeling of just feeling so bad about myself, in a way, that's the only person I knew. And so letting go of that is it's tough. There's a grief that goes along with, after the healing is even done, that person's gone. And so if you go through this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there are so many beautiful gifts in the burning off of things that you don't need anymore, in the healing of your own spirit, the trust that you build within yourself. And how does that impact your life? Like, how did that impact my life? Everything changed. When you trust yourself, everything is open. It's game on. Relationships start shifting. How can we realistically trust people when we can't even trust ourselves enough to go and confront ourselves? On some level, I guess there's some kind of trust. Otherwise, how does a relationship how is it even maintained? But it's totally different when we have this deep trust. The pedestals start to fall. We don't worry as much about what the other people are doing to satisfy us or to maintain our trust or to maintain our expectations, because there's a high level of trust inside that is growing. It's always growing. And like I said, I don't think we ever get there because we're always deepening that trust. And so things just get easier because of that. And there's so many other things that change. Those addictive patterns we have start to loosen. We start feeling less like doing those things and more like doing things that would be helpful and healthier and productive, useful. We start showing up differently for people. We treat our finances totally different. There's less impulsiveness. There's more heartfelt reflection about why we're doing things we're doing. Like even things like how we eat and what we drink and how we move our bodies. It all starts to shift. And so we start coming into a life that is better for us. It's more sensible. It's better for our families. It's better for our community. It's better for humanity. We can start stepping into our purpose. There's many angles we can take on what this can do for us. And I try in these videos to portray some of that, share some of that, because I don't think that any of us is better than anybody else. I think that we're all going through this journey to some degree. And so we're all the same in that way. And so some people don't think it's useful to share the journey or aspects of the journey, but I do. I do think it's helpful to share or useful to share. And so if you are someone who's thinking about going on this journey or feeling pulled, I don't think you think about going on this journey. I think you're called to the journey. And if you're not called to the journey, it's not your time to be called to the journey. Somehow there's a divine timing in it all. And I think that sometimes what I wanted to say is sometimes we create things in our lives that feel like everything is falling apart, when really we're being set up to go on this journey, the hero's journey, to confront ourselves, to let go of what we need to let go of. And if we trust in it enough, we start to gain that trust in ourselves, and we start to see how it unfolds and how it becomes so helpful in our lives. In the beginning, when this all started for me, I thought, what have I created here? It was horrible in the beginning. And so all the things in my life started popping up to help me clear out and burn off what needed to go. What I wanted to go, what I wanted to go, what I was visualizing creating from the very beginning was what I'm living right now. Although it didn't actually look like this, but what I'm feeling is what I was picturing feeling back then. And so that's the other thing about it. I always had a clear vision of how I wanted to feel. And I would step into that as much as I could, as much as it came to me to step into it, between burning off what needed to go and then envisioning and stepping into what I wanted to be, what I wanted to feel, who I wanted to become, that's how I got to a place where it's not painful anymore. It's not painful. Even if I have to confront something, it's not that painful. I know what to do. I have processes. I trust myself. I trust the process of emotions. They just go back to wherever they came from at the end of the day. We don't really need to be scared of it. But when we haven't started the process of confronting ourselves, it seems really scary. And so all of the things that I've done for myself over the last 10 years, all of the ways that I've gotten in to burn all of that stuff off, I put into these recordings. I put all of this together. I'm doing it right now, putting all of it together. I'm pulling out meditations and processes and techniques and angles that I took to get really inside and confront things that were hiding, because a lot of this stuff is hiding. And so as you start to see that things start coming through and start showing itself. And so that's what I did. And I'm taking everything that I learned, mainly to help someone in my family who, if this can help her get through what she's going through, then it can help a lot of people. And so I'm gathering everything together. And it's a whole pile of my entire healing process of the hero's journey. So I've captured so much of my journey by recordings, by writing, and I'm just gathering everything together, putting it in order as I experienced it, as I did the burning off. And I'm going to start testing it, recording it, testing it, and I hope that it's going to be really, really helpful, because even when I'm going through it, I get transported back to how I felt back then. And I'm just so grateful. So if it can help this person, it's going to be really, really amazing. It's a lot of work, but it's so worth it. And so I'll share that with you guys later. But for now, I just wanted to share that with you guys, I think it's important, if you're listening to me, that you know where I'm coming from, and you know I have the experience behind it. No, I'm not a clinical psychologist, but by default, going through this journey, you learn a lot about the mind, the processes. And I really related to a lot of what Jordan Peterson was talking about, just because I went through that journey. I completely understood what he was talking about. Yes, I did that. That's exactly what I was feeling. That's exactly how it unfolded. And so when you go through something like that, you just know. So experience is worth a lot, I think, especially when we're talking about something like this. So if you have anything that you want to ask me, or anything that you wanted me to talk about, please send me whatever you want to know or talk about at info@kimberlypatey.com, and I would be happy to answer anything or speak about anything you want me to. And so we will leave it at that. And so see you next week on another Tuesday's Transformational Tip. Thanks for being here. Love you guys. Bye.